Hey, good morning, Keith.
Good morning, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, this morning I'd like to chat with you not about cancel culture, which is something we probably should talk about at some point, whether or not Christians should support cancel culture. But today I want us to chat a little bit about the quitting culture. It really seems like in America, quitting is uh, way too often the thing to do. We our phones don't work exactly right and we quit on them and get rid of them. Sadly, our marriages don't work perfectly all the time and we quit on them. And in so many ways, when things get rough, uh, too many of us quit. I want to ask you about some of your own personal experiences and whether or not you've ever been in a situation where you were tempted to quit and were able to get through it, as well as I'd love for us to talk this morning about anything that the Bible says specifically for Christians about this idea of quitting. What say you?
Yeah, I agree with your assessment that a lot of folks seem to quit. And I think, and this is just my perspective, I think it's because it is in some ways easier to quit now than it ever used to be. When like my grandparents' generation, they had this motto: use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without.
Mm.
Because there was no there was no plan B, C through Z like we have. It was not as easy. Would they have been tempted to quit things like we do if they had those same options? I think so. I mean, human nature being what it is, I feel like we are just so we have so many options. And let's just be honest. So you mentioned, I totally agree that unfortunately with divorce situations, it's just seems like some people are just not willing to try. It just feels easier to quit at the time. But let's be honest, if the economics of the situation, the legality of the situation had been different 50 years, 100 years ago, would we be looking at the same thing then as we are now? I kind of suspect so, because human nature just tends to take that easy way out. And if you're talking in the 1940s, there was, financially, maybe she was fed up in the marriage, but what else could she do? So, um,
He
so
may
I
he
don't
he
know
may
that
have
we're
been a bad option, but she didn't have any better options.
yeah, exactly. So that's why I say that I think options make it easier to quit. And, there have been a few times that I've wanted to quit, like in endurance type situations. I've wanted to quit, and in the moment, obviously later I would have just forever regretted it. But I've done a couple of 50K trail runs. Trails are so much harder than roads. Roads are just easy compared to trails, and both were in just terrible conditions. One was in snow and ice, and one was in pouring rain. Like it literally rained all day. The mud was so thick on the trails, it was pulling my shoes off when I ran. And after several hours of that, you're like, what was I thinking? And I really want this to just be over. But the deal is, had it been a road race, like where you're actually in civilization,
Mm.
and if you quit, nothing, worst thing, you call an Uber and get back to your car. I don't know, maybe I would have done it. But in both of those occasions, I was in the middle of absolute nowhere. So I could have decided, okay, I'm done, but I still have to get back, and so there was no benefit to quitting, or else I might have quit. So that's why I say I think having so many options makes that seem like an easier way out. New phone, boom, got it. We've got the money to do it. There's different models. My model was out of date 2 days after I bought it, so I'm going to get something else. And it's just the prevalence of so many options that we have today in our culture just makes it a lot easier to quit.
Yeah, it's so powerful when you talk about the idea of options, uh, and whether or not the option comes easy or it's hard. Uh, the uh, the Navy SEALs are known for having some of the most rigorous training of all of the military. And the few Navy SEALs that I tend to follow and try to learn from, it seems that through BUDS training, the number one common denominator is not their athleticism, it's that they just didn't see quitting as an option. They had plan A, which was to complete this thing. There was no plan B. And so sometimes the options may may literally exist, but we can erase that option from our mind, thus getting to the point where you're talking about, which is when there is no option to quit, you don't quit because you had no option.
Right.
Even if an option presents itself, we can hopefully at some point with the things that matter most, train ourselves to treat options that actually do exist as if they don't.
Right. Yeah. And you talk about those SEALs. So, the ones that are ready to tap out, they go and ring the bell 3 times,
Yeah.
put their helmet on the ground and walk out. Every single time that happens, the other ones hear that.
Yeah.
And that's got to sound so nice. Like, I so want to ring that bell too. But like you said, in their mind, it was never an option. It's just not going to be an option.
Yeah, I've learned that the trainers during BUDS, the instructors, one of the ways that they get people to quit is by telling them when they're in their lowest moment. Back at the base, there's some warm beds, nice shower,
Pizza.
pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's just all the things that you could ever want in terms
Yeah.
of comfort. And so when you bring that in to this conversation, when comfort is so easily accessible, why would you ever go through a painful experience?
Right.
And
Yep.
so you're right. One of the things you mentioned about your run as a wrestler, wrestlers run a lot. They don't run necessarily for time like a runner does, but you run long and far because you're trying to lose weight and cut weight and all this. And one of the keys is to run as far away from your starting point as you can because you've got to come back.
Exactly. Yeah. I have a funny story about it. So I've run a bunch of 7 marathons, I think, a bunch of half marathons and stuff like that. I have a buddy that we were running a half marathon together, and actually it was just nobody. It wasn't a good day for any of us, and it's just you just don't know why. Just some days are good, and you don't know why some days aren't. Well, I wasn't having a particularly good race either, but when I got to the finish line, I was with some others, and we're like, "Hey, where is?" And I won't say his name, and like, well, we don't know. So we're like, he should be finished by now, and after like an hour, we get a text. He says, "Hey, I'm at home." We were like, "We never saw you at the finish line." He said, "Yeah, get this, on this route with 2 miles to go, you run beside a parking garage where his car was parked. And at 11 miles, he got too close to his car." You know what I'm saying? He got too close to his car, veered into the parking garage, got in his car and went home, never finished the race. And to this day, we laugh about it. But I thought, he got too close to his car. Quitting, the option to quit just got too close, too easy. And that's kind of goes back to what I'm saying. When you've got options, that can happen. The most recent thing I did that was of an endurance type, category was the Three Peaks Challenge in Egypt, where you hike 3 mountain peaks in the same day. And one of them being Mount Sinai. But Sinai is really steep, but it's not the highest. And then it's not just the hiking; it's like you'll walk hours through the desert between peaks. And yeah, it was so. I've never done anything as difficult. It was way harder than a 50K ultra marathon in mud or ice or whatever. And I wanted to quit. And I'm telling you, if I somehow could have ordered a helicopter into the desert, I sure would have been tempted. But again, the quitting, it wasn't an option because I'm still in the middle of the desert. In fact, trying to get done before it got so late at night became the goal. So if I quit, spending all night in the desert, and I'm still just as far from where I need to be as I am if I just keep going. So Again, the desire to quit is natural. And if we have easy options to take, we as human beings tend to take them. And I think that's just part of the inherent problem that we have in a society where we have so many options.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Now, you just said that the desire to quit is natural, and I totally agree. We have a Bible that is supernaturally given to us, and we have guidance in it. What do you think from a Christian standpoint, from a biblical standpoint, is quitting the should quitting be a key component to the Christian character?
Yeah, it depends on what you're quitting. Yeah, there are a lot of things we should quit, right? Isn't that ironic? The things that we really ought to quit, we have a hard time quitting because and the difference is those bring some measure of temporary pleasure, some temporary measure of gratitude, or something. Whereas the things we should not quit sometimes are difficult. But again, it's human nature. If you go back to the book of Hebrews, he's writing to them in chapter 12, and this is something, obviously every distance runner's thought of, who reads the Bible has thought about. He tells them to lay aside every weight, every hindrance, and then run with patience, run with endurance the race set before you. Why does he say run with endurance? Why does he say run with patience? Because it takes it. It's a long run, and it's not a sprint. Nobody ever says, "Hey, you just hang in there on that 100-meter dash. You just hang in there, man." Nobody says that because it's over in 10, 15 seconds, depending on who you are. But this is not that. And that's why there's that need for endurance and the stick-to-itiveness that quitting is just not an option.
Yeah, so I I think Hebrews is the book about not quitting, not giving up. And I think when you look at that writing from the early chapters highlighting all the ways that Jesus is better than the things that came before Jesus, I think that's a reminder of something that I think is really practical for us to hold on to, which is the person who quits versus the person who doesn't quit. In that moment of pain, exhaustion, fatigue, frustration, where does your mind go? Does it go to the things that you have as resources? So, do you have water with you when you're on that long run? What training have you done, et cetera, that is a resource to you, just like Jesus is a resource to us spiritually on this long run. We're not running this race of endurance by ourselves. You get into chapter 10 in that same book where he reminds them to not forget that when they first became Christians, all of the things they endured, getting put in prison, losing their property. And I think that's one of the things that is super important with regards to not quitting, which is just remembering that you've been through tough times before. I'm going to pause and ask you about that. Have you ever been in the middle of something that really stinks and pull from the reservoir of memories where you've endured in the past to help you get through the endurance needed in the present?
Yeah, I think when you've gone through hard times, it actually it kind of raises the bar, so to speak, on what you now know you can do. And because going back to the running metaphor, which is something the writer of the book of Hebrews used, uh, because also if you go back to chapter 11, he says you've got all these people of great faith, and they are, as it were, standing around they're waiting for you, they're applauding you. And then he moves right into chapter 12:1, run with endurance. Like, you got all these fans around you. It's not hard to run when on the road, when there's people out there with signs and they're cheering and they're giving you half bananas when you run by and some Gatorade. Man, you can keep going then. It's when you're in the middle of like nowhere trail run, you're already 27 miles in and you're kind of done with it. That's when it gets hard. So, but once you know you can do that, then you can. And I think some of again, sticking with the metaphor, when you're training and You know, you don't like running uphill and you don't like running into the wind, but those are both your friends, because when race day comes, those will have prepared you to be able to handle those things. Well, in life, the same thing. There are a lot of people who have been through a lot of things, and because they've come through the other side, they now know they can handle this. And I feel bad for the people whose life has been so cushy that they don't really, they've not had to go there and do that. And when the time comes, they're not sure if they can.
Oh, so true. And it's one of the things when you get into the conversation about um, a victimhood mindset versus a victor's mindset. I think that's one of the key things is how do you view your own struggles? So the person who often develops a victim's mindset or gets into the hood of victimhood thinks of everything that has not gone perfectly in their life as an aggressive measure against them. This is unfair. This is not right. I shouldn't have had to do this. Whereas those same exact experiences can literally be motivating from the standpoint of being able to think, hey, I'm tougher because of this.
Right.
This has exposed a resilience in me that I would have never known existed. The thing that I'm now dealing with isn't nearly as bad as fill in the blank because I've already gone through fill in the blank, whether I wanted to or not, I did. And so yeah, I think that's just incredibly important to how you get over the struggle in the present. Well, part of it is based on all the stuff you've had to deal with in the past, and it's really actually a blessing to have gone through a bunch of undesirable situations in your past because it prepares you for whatever might come.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going back to the book of Hebrews, I think the theme is don't quit, don't go back. And one of the ways he talks about doing that is encouraging one another, exhorting one another, spurring one another on. And again, I think that feels to me like he's still using this race analogy. And, we need that. It's a lot easier to run with a partner. It's a lot easier to run with somebody. And so from a spiritual standpoint, we need each other. And that includes in the in-person public assembly.
Yeah.
And sort of a side note to this is my concern for about a year now is that we've got a lot of folks who have now gotten out of the habit of coming in person and being with each other, even though that's what we're supposed to do. Like, you go all the way back. The original plan of God could have been, okay, I want you to repent, be baptized for the forgiveness of your sins, go your merry way.
Exactly.
Instead, he didn't. He said, no, you're now a part of a community, and you're going to get together and you're going to exhort one another, you're going to share with one another and be with one another. And the circumstances of the world for the last 12 months have made that difficult. And some are not assembling for legitimately, reasons out of concern. I'm afraid we've got some other folks that have just gotten really comfortable with. I mean, they're gonna zoom in on church every Sunday, but it's really comfy now. Got my shorts on, got a cup of coffee, my feet are propped up, don't have to get ready. It's not the same. It really is not the same. I've watched races on TV, and it's not the same, and there's not the encouragement that you're not receiving that you're not giving that, because again, go back to Hebrews 10:25, people pull out of context, say you're not supposed to miss church. Well, but the reason is because when you assemble, you give encouragement and you receive encouragement, and it's much easier to run the Christian race with that than without that. And my big concern is we have a lot of folks who have now gotten used to not having that or giving that, and I'm afraid they've essentially quit the race.
Yeah, so you can encourage in many other ways, but there's nothing better than that in-person situation. And you mentioned, zooming in. Well, back to your buddy who got too close to his car and then just quit. When I don't care whether it's you go to a gym to work out, when you get up and you get yourself physically dressed, ready, and you leave your place of comfort to go do a thing, you are so much more committed to engaging in that thing than if you do it from the comforts of your own home. And worship service and fellowship is no different. I can just turn my video off on Zoom and go deal with a load of laundry, which is super convenient. But how connected am I to that thing that's happening in that church service?
Yeah. And so my concern and therefore my exhortation to people would be, if you can work in public, shop in public, go to the gym in public, won't you consider coming back and being a source of encouragement and receiving encouragement in person with your brethren? I'm going to obviously not talking about breaking any laws or rules or wherever those exist, but in most places it's possible.
Correct.
But in many places we still have people who are doing everything else in public.
Sure.
And by the way, I don't know about I can't speak for many other places, but where we are, it's every other pew, mask required, hand sanitizer, individual communion. Like, there's not a safer place. There's not, you know what I'm saying? So even the person that's concerned, if you're running the race, you need to run it with somebody, and you really can't do that on the couch watching worship.
Yeah, when you run together, it's so mutually encouraging throughout, and everything from the pace you run to how far you run. It's so much easier when you've got somebody running it right with you. And just to lean on that running metaphor from Hebrews, and to keep our focus on the finishing aspect of the race, to keep our focus on the finishing line or the victory line where Jesus is already there. He went through his suffering and he's reached the finish line, and we are hoping to have that same success. And I think that's something that is so practically valuable when it comes to those moments of decision as to whether or not I quit or continue to go, is where is my focus? Is my focus in the pain and the frustration and the challenge of the moment? Or am I able to look ahead, look forward to the prize at the end of whatever my journey may be, regardless of how difficult it may be?
Yeah, and that is, I mean, go back to running races, thinking about finishing. Sometimes that's really the main thing that keeps you going, is I want to finish. I won't be first. I know I'm not going to win. That wasn't even on the table when I began, but I want to finish. And I've got a bunch of medals over there. There's a few trophies for when I have actually placed, but there's a bunch of medals. They hang up over there, and I actually never even noticed them until now. But you want to be able to finish to get that medal. There's just some satisfaction in finishing, and I think that's what we. So again, in Hebrews 12, he reminds them, you're not only running with patience, you've got your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of your salvation, and that's aren't we glad, spiritually speaking, none of us have to be first?
Yeah.
We just need to finish.
That's right.
And that's the key.
Well, and I, too often we think that we're comparing ourselves to others, and that it is a race with those around us, but it's really not.
No.
There is a race to run, and everybody who finishes gets the prize.
Yeah.
And especially in a world of social media where we are bombarded on a daily basis with all of these comparisons, whether they're intentional comparisons or not, that is something we need to lay aside, as Hebrews tells us, and remember that we're just running our race. It's Keith versus Keith, and it's Brandon versus Brandon, because Brandon can't keep up with Keith. But if he wanted to, it would be a foolish endeavor to begin with. But how true that is spiritually as well as physically.
Yeah. Oh, if finishing in the top 3 was the goal, in 75% of the races I quit, I'll probably never start because I know that's not going to happen. We just need to finish. But how do you finish? Well, you need, as you mentioned earlier, you kind of need some fuel along the way. You need to have some water. You need to have, had a little bit of a carb up, something to bring with you. You need to run with people, to give you encouragement, give you accountability. I mean, that's another thing I think we've lost in the last 12 months is accountability. It used to be like if someone was absent from the assembly for a couple of weeks, like, wow, we check on them, we're concerned about them. And then it's gotten to where just like it's kind of so encouragement, accountability, all that we get from running with one another, fixing our eyes on the finish line. These are all things that we have to do to overcome the temptation to quit, because sometimes in the moment, quitting seems like the best option, and it never is.
No, not for the things that matter. And so
Right.
as we wrap up, I think undergirding all of this is, why did you do it in the first place? And for those of us who have given our lives to Christ, you did it with the reality being, I'm lost, but I have a Savior who loves me and wants me to be eternally with him. And that's the best, most powerful why to ever endure anything and get into anything. And in those moments of difficulty where you want to quit, I think we need to remember that. I think we need to remember the why we got started, why we signed up for the race is one thing, and why we gave our lives to Christ is infinitely more important.
Yeah, when you're tempted to quit, ask yourself why you began. And because sometimes we forget, kind of easy to forget that along the way.
Yeah. Any final words to encourage
No,
people?
it's just that, no, it's a bit of a dilemma. It's an ironic dilemma. The more blessed our lives are, the more options we have. And the more options we have, the more chances, the more opportunities to make the wrong choice we have, to quit and just get something else. And we really do live in a disposable world. My washing machine is not working right now. The repairman was here. He's supposed to come back today. And I said, all right, well, because it's 7 years old. I said, tell me what's the best brand? He said, they're all not made to last. This is a repairman. He said, none of them. He said, this one, 7 years old, has done what it was meant to do. So we live in TVs now. You don't bother, fixing a TV. You just throw it out and get another one. We really do live in a very disposable world, single use type world. And that mentality can bleed into the thinking that we put into much more important things. Whether I fix the TV or not is not really that important. But if I decide to single use my marriage or my whatever the thing is that really matters, that I really need to stay in and fight for and work on and improve, if I decide, we're out, that's when it really becomes a big issue. And so we have that in our culture, in our blessed, many options, single use, disposable culture. Those things can bleed over into spiritual decisions too.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you one more thing before I let you go. Because we live in such a comfortable world, because it's so easy just to throw something out and go get something new. I've read in one book that I really like, a book by Dan Crenshaw, Fortitude, where he encourages people to intentionally put themselves in uncomfortable situations on a regular basis to maintain an edge, a strength, so that you're able to combat all of the comforts and the softness and the mindset that says it's easy to quit. Would you agree with that? And if so, how does Keith implement that?
I do agree with that. And I would think that, again, is the need to be uncomfortable I mean, I agree with that need, but I'm saying the fact that we actually need to do something different to feel uncomfortable is just proof of how blessed we are. So I'm out there in the Sinai desert and for 14 and a half hours. And I'm done with it. And when I got finished, I went back to where I was and I had a meal, although I was so tired, I really couldn't eat, but I had a bed and I went to sleep. But think about the people that lived in that desert, and there are a few that still do. What I was experiencing that I considered very uncomfortable was every day.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
It's just their life.
we are so soft and we are so pampered and we are so comfortable. I mean, if you get in the car and it's not the temperature is not like when that 2-degree range of preference, like, and I'm in regularly around the world in church assemblies where there's zero HVAC. The HVAC is that there's windows open and they build it to take advantage of the prevailing breeze. And it's 90 degrees outside. In fact, I taught in our school in Myanmar last year and it hit 100 degrees every day. And we have nothing but a fan in the classroom and it's just normal, but not us. We've got our little window of comfort. And anything outside of that, there's complaining and griping. And by the way, the church thermostat keeper deserves eternal life just based on that. Because nobody has been subjected to that kind of complaining. It's too hot, too cold, all at the same day, same person maybe. And it's just because we are so comfortable that we actually have to manufacture at times to manufacture discomfort. And we manufacture problems. You talk about drama. You know what we call drama is? It's a manufactured problem. It's not really a problem. It's just kind of a manufactured problem. And so again, we're just so comfortable that we don't really know what discomfort feels like. And when it comes along, it throws us. And many people are willing to just ditch that, find something new, go somewhere else, make some other choice, and just quit on what they have.
Yeah, so true and so sad. And so let's try to recognize that temptation, find ways to keep yourself out of that zone. One of the best ways is to serve others, to put yourself in uncomfortable situations where you're serving others that are much worse off than you, and be reminded of how good you have it, because it's so easy to compare yourself to, say, Bill Gates and or Jeff Bezos or something, and say, wow, man, it must be nice to be them, when what 80% of the world, 90% of the world looks at our lives and would trade it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And just to remain humble about how blessed we are, and not use that as an excuse to quit the moment the temperature just isn't perfect for us, but rather recognize how fortunate and blessed we are, and run that race with intent, with purpose, and fully focus on finishing.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I would go back to what you said early on, that quitting just can't be an option.
Yeah.
There isn't a plan. I started this race for a reason. And that reason is the only reason that matters. That's plan A, and there is no plan B. And this is what we're going to do. We're not going to quit.
So yep. Yeah. Specifically with our spiritual life, there can be no plan B. There can be no plan B. Amen. Well, thank you so much. You enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope your repair guy comes, and he may bring a couple disposable washer and dryers with him so that you can switch it out.
Yeah, we are in need of cleaning laundry by now. It's been like almost a week. And again, you realize how blessed you are.
Yeah.
People complain about having to do laundry. Are you serious? Like, really? You have to take it down to the river? You have to walk 3 miles with it on your head?
Yeah.
All three articles of clothing that you own, you have to walk. We're so blessed.
Yeah.
And so again, I think we need a broken washing machine every now and then to remind us how blessed we are.
Yeah. We just went without our washer for about a month. And that, yeah, I'm very thankful for it.
We're blessed.
We are.
So don't quit.
Yeah. I'm with you. I still want to go into that story, but that's,
I could too.
but it is. And by the way, it's very biblical for your washer and dryer to last 7 years, don't you think?
You think so? That's a complete number?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. My checking account doesn't agree, but we'll see. All right, man. Take care. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
All right,
Same.
see you. All right, bye.
Bye.